All right. Yeah, we got a good crowd here, so we'll kick it off now. Thanks everyone for joining us today. I'm RC from BuildOps, and I run our content and webinar programming here. And if you're not familiar with BuildOps, we are the only all-in-one platform built for commercial contractors, helping teams manage everything from projects to service, voila, and operations. And you can check us out over at buildops.com. But today, what we've got here is Toby Mitchell and Fred Sargent. We're going to talk to us a little bit about service work. And it's funny because when I talked to Fred earlier about this topic, one of the things he mentioned was like a lot of contractors think of service work as something separate from what they're already doing, but the reality is that most of you are actually already kind of doing it. So the challenge isn't really starting from scratch. It's just recognizing the opportunity that's already in front of you and structuring it in a way that creates steady and predictable revenue. So with that context in mind, let's jump right in. Fred, Toby, welcome. We'll do some quick intros. I'll kick it off with Fred first. But while we do that, I'm going to launch our first poll. Just so you know, you'll see a few of these polls popping up throughout the webinar. It gives us an idea of who we're talking to and how we should shape our conversation throughout. Let's see, I'm going to pop that up right now. There you go. So please give a second to input that. And also, if you have any questions or comments throughout this entire event, you have a Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom. Use that. By all means, we will monitor that and we'll bring that into the conversation. Fred, go ahead.
Sure. I'm Fred Sargent, and I'm president of Great Service Forums. I tell people that I am a recovering contractor because I was the president and owner of a family business for many years. The company was very heavily into industrial electrical construction, and we decided at one point to do some experimentation with service and maintenance, and we were just astounded by the results we got. And so the profit margins and everything else that went with it convinced us this is something we should do a lot more seriously. 10 years ago, I started a national organization that's dedicated 100% to helping contractors develop and grow their service related business, and we call that Great Service Forums.
Awesome. Toby.
Hey everybody, I'm Toby Mitchell, Classical Electric and Consulting. We're primarily a service and design build contractor based out of California. Also the governor of my local NECA chapter, as well as I am the chair of the Construction Technology Committee at Electri.
Toby called himself the governor, but I think he prefers to call himself the governator, but that's all right. That's fine. Governor is fine. To recap, thanks for folks for adding your input to the poll. Just so you all know, half of you, the majority, 50% of you said that you do service work, but it's not formally structured business yet. So is that surprising to you, Fred, that that's the majority of the response?
No, because that's very typical of our industry. Well, there's lots of folks doing what they call small jobs or special projects or things of that sort, which when you really get down to it, should be classified as service work. For one thing, it is directly for owners, not general contractors. It has better profit margins. It's not the sort of thing you go out and have to bid and bond and so forth. And it has a very tolerable risk profile. So bottom line, if you start to look at the data of a lot of things you're doing, it fits right into a good classification of service work.
I'm gonna just say one thing actually as a level set as well. I am no longer sick, but I have a lung infection, so I may or may not cough. I will mute whenever I can, but just as a heads up to the listeners here that I apologize in advance. Toby, you can continue with what Fred was saying, but I also want to call out one other thing. There was zero people in this poll who said that they don't do service work at all. What does that mean for you?
I think it's great, and to what Fred's point is, I think I'm not surprised that there's more people saying they're doing service. I think as an industry, electrically, we have not done a great job on defining what service is. And I love Fred's definition of customer direct, repairs, maintenance, small projects and stuff, not GCs, not competitively bidding, stuff like that. And so I'm not surprised that as many people are doing it. I think a lot more people are doing it. They just might not be calling it service.
Mm-hmm. So then,
and in some other industries, it's very clear if you were manufacturing jet engines for airplanes, and you have a second business to maintain and service them and so forth, it's pretty clear which is which. And incidentally, in that kind of business, they really make most of their money in the service part of it. And so I think that that's something that we don't have such a clear definition here, but we certainly do have something that's in common for everything which we like to lump into service, and that is something which has to do with building a customer base and building something which really creates value in your company. And we can talk about that a little bit more later, but the main thing is lumping all those things which are tough to define into this general category that you're building a customer base.
So what is the first step in recognizing the service work that's already happening within a business then? How does it easier? What do you do in order to recognize that?
Well, you can certainly look at the data that you have on the work that you've been doing. And when you stop to consider how much of it is directly for owners, how much of it is with a better profit margin, how much of it, when you analyze it, has a very tolerable risk profile, et cetera, you can begin to see the sorts of things which you would find in service work. And so if you just look through your records, even casually, you can see where you are.
Yeah,
Toby, yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I agree with that. All you have to do is just look at your jobs. You know, I'm sure everyone has small jobs here that are actually service calls, customer direct. And I'd even say, and we can talk about this more later, I'd even say all your warranty work is service work, right? That should fall under your service division as well. It's that customer relationship that over, getting a set of prints and bidding it competitively.
Just a reminder for folks that if you have any questions or comments or anything like that, pop them into the Q&A, and then we will definitely loop them into the conversation. I'm going to pop up, before we switch to the next section, I'm going to pop up a second poll here. Basically, it's what's holding you back. So the question is, what's the biggest challenge keeping you from growing service work? I think this is apropos for the first poll response, which is that a majority of you are doing it, and it's not necessarily formally structured or not. So we'd love to learn a little bit more about what is holding you back on that, and that'll help us shape this next part of the section. But as you fill that out, we'll transition to the next section, which is talking a little bit more about structuring service so it becomes systematic. Now, Fred, you have what I think is a three-pronged approach to this, and there's an intentional order here, and will serve as a caveat here, all that I think this is an ideal order, right? And like in an ideal world, you can do this. This is not realistic for all, but if you can do it, and I think it starts with like what it's structure, systems, staff. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, if you take it in that order, because, generally speaking, when a contractor decides to do a little bit more in service, it's by pulling in that one electrician who has usually been taking the van out when you got a call, which seemed like a service call, and putting that electrician in charge of it. And certainly that's the way we start lots of things. But in reality, if you want to really organize things and get to where you want to be in service, the first thing you have to do is think about the structure. Because if you have new construction work and you have service work, you have one company but two businesses. You really have two businesses. So the first thing is, and this may sound like a big thing to do if you have a small company, but you have to kind of separate them. And you have to take the service group and structure it to do service work. And the next step in that, of course, is to have the right kind of system to follow. And systems are both the operating procedures that you set up for your business, but it's also the software.
Which, if I can interject for 1 second, by the way,
Yeah.
that is the in the poll response, that is the number one thing that's holding folks back, is that they don't have the operating procedures in place, including the software needed to manage service jobs. So it's interesting that you're saying that ideally you first structure the business, and if you can go back to that for a second before we go back into systems, what does that mean to separate these? Like in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, yeah, bring a group of people into a different room, but I think
Well,
it's more
it does
complicated than
mean
that.
separate them, and hopefully you have enough floor space and wherever you are to physically separate people. And one thing I will point out, sometimes you see a situation where somebody says, okay, here's my service manager who also is an estimator. And that doesn't work, because a day will come when you have something that has to be done with service, and your estimator is going to turn around and say, hey, boss, do you want me to get this big bid out, or do you want me to handle the service call? So you really do have to separate the two, because, in fact, they are two different businesses. And that means divvying up lots of things, and it's not an easy thing to do, but I think it really ought to be the first step, because somebody said one time, forget about strategy, culture eats strategy for breakfast. Well, what I want to say is that structure is what determines your culture. You can't go in and wave your arms around and change the culture in a company. But if you structure things right, your culture will start to evolve there because of the way you set things up. But the systems you get,
Yeah.
and this includes software systems, and we all know the name of a company that makes some good software for this, uh, that will help drive setting up your structure, because having the right software, which was designed for service and not
Right.
just an afterthought with something else, is very important when it comes to systems.
Now,
And
Toby, obviously,
yeah, go ahead.
Toby's obviously, so for full disclosure, Toby's a build ups customer as well. Uh, and you don't have to speak specifically about build ops, like just in general, like to that point from Fred about uh, a software that's built with service in mind, right? From intentionally from the ground up. Why is that important? How does that help you as a company?
Yeah, so it sounds like I'm like most people on this call, right? Have my service division with no processes in place, right? And so that was one of the good things about it. Happened to be build ops, but when we signed with build ops, they actually were asking about my processes and wanted me to process map everything. So it was really good because it made me sit down and actually process everything. And so that really helps. And then just having a way to share information is key, right? So I don't know how you could share that information quickly on paper and not do it. But a lot of times, like we started to have like a small process, but then when we looked at build ops and we saw how their workflows were going, then we said, okay, can we tweak some of our workflows and stuff like that? And it's a game changer, because really, like to Fred's point, we started the service business, or we started Classic Electric, which is a service business, but it was just me in a truck back then. So, I had the processes all in my head, but nothing was actually documented. Then we started to grow, and then we started seeing some pain points of like, man, these guys don't really know what to do. Not that they don't know what they're doing. They just didn't know what the processes was, because for some reason they can't read my mind, which is mind boggling to me.
I've always joked about, I'll say to like, even I'm on a marketing team here at Build Ops, and I'll joke with the marketing team about like how, like, what if I die or if I'm in the hospital, like you should be able to do what I do. That's very important to me. And it sounds like that's what you're talking about with the systems in place here, is like, not that someone's going to die, but if they leave or they're sick or whatever it may be, that it shouldn't be it should not be able to it should not slow down the experience for the customer in the end, right?
In other
It's
words, all the
interesting.
information shouldn't walk out the door with
Right.
whoever leaves by whatever means.
Right. That's a much more politically nice way to say, instead of someone dies. Um, and then lastly, Fred, you mentioned staff the organization. So staff,
Yeah.
again, context, ideal world, ideal world. But talk about that, about staffing the organization as the third part of this process.
Well, sure. Just imagine that you were trying to recruit somebody to be the next service person in your organization. Imagine the difference in the conversation if you can explain how you have your service group structured, the kind of support and systems that you have for it, and imagine how much different that conversation is going to be than, hey, we want you to come and join our service group because you're such a good guy.
Much
Uh,
easier to point to something, right? To point to things. Yeah.
well, it's a way to attract good people who can see the opportunity in the company because of the way they have things set up.
Yeah,
How does
and
that? Yeah, go ahead, Toby. Go ahead.
it helps with the like we have an extremely young crew, right? So our oldest field tech is under 30. And
Hmm.
so having those processes in place really help because not only are they trying to navigate repairing the problem or doing the maintenance or whatever little project you give them, they're also trying to navigate how you structure your business, how you run things and stuff like that. As I know a lot of guys that come to us from a construction side, they're used to doing their time at the end of the week, right? Like if they got to have all their time cards in at Friday at 3:30, they're submitting all their time cards, Monday at 8 a.m., right? Where in the service world, I need that time submitted as soon as that job is done because it might be done, it might be billed. It's service work is very cash flow dependent, right? And so it's just different mindsets. And so to have those structures in place, those procedures in place, it helps the tech because it's a lot more that they have to try to remember than just doing the repair or doing the small project.
What's the smartest way to turn one-off service jobs into repeat business?
Well, one thing for sure, if your service electrician is trained to look for opportunities with a customer's facility when they're there to do anything, there's the opportunity to bring up pull-through work. Now, the advantage of having the electrician bring that up is that a customer will think of an electrician as an honest broker when this comes around. Uh, they can't imagine that the electrician is getting a commission for selling something, so they take whatever he or she tells them is gospel and is good advice. Toby, I know you've had that experience many times.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we're very customer base, right? So it's our guys aren't even selling. They're just saying, "Hey, I notice that these lights are getting old, and they're probably going to be going out soon. We should probably upgrade these to LEDs. And not only will it save you money, but we're going to end up having a lot of time in replacing anyway. And it's not stuff where it's like, okay, cool, do it right now, which sometimes that does happen,
Yeah.
but it places, that thought in the back of people's heads, especially on the large, commercial industrial places, where they got maintenance budgets, and it's like, oh,
Right.
cool, I'm going to add that to the budget next year, and stuff like that. So it's, your electrician on the field, that's why he's different than a construction electrician, is a subject matter expert, and he is, a partnership with your customer, you know.
I like the script that you said there. Excuse me, everyone. Um, like we probably should replace these LEDs. It'll save you money in the long run. This recalls back to me, and if I remember to do this tomorrow, folks, when I send the recap of this webinar, I'll send a link to a conversation Fred and Toby and I were part of. I believe it was this summer on NFPA 70B, but a lot of the language was about showing the clear value of like, this is not just costing you more money, right? This is actually saving you money in the long run. So that's a great language script to use, is like, this is an opportunity for you to actually save money, and might as well tackle it at some point. And so when you're ready, here we are. Fred, I want to, I don't know how much we'll dive into this topic, but I know there was opinions either way. But you talked a little bit about providing 5-year warranties on work performed. Can you explain a little bit more about that?
Well, typically you hear companies providing a 1 year warranty, and then a lot of contractors will look at that as, woo, that year's up and we don't have to worry about a warranty anymore. Uh, you're far better off to provide a 5 year warranty. And here's why. Uh, Most of the time, anything that's going to break is going to break in the first year. There's a thing called a bathtub curve, which describes this and basically shows that in the first year, you have a high incident of things that fail, and then that failure rate stays fairly steady. There you go, for quite a while. And then, of course, in time, it comes up at the other end. But the main thing is, you're not risking any more with a 5 year warranty than you are with a 1 year warranty because of all that infant mortality, as it says on the chart. So I think there's a great deal of wisdom in having a 5 year warranty. plus the fact that puts you in a position to call the customer back at least once a year and say, hey, this is a warranty call. And it will go through. You know, if people think it's a sales call, it's something entirely different. But when you're calling on a warranty call, that's another matter. And
Then pull
it's an
through work
opportunity to,
conversation happens there. There you go. Like,
yes,
yeah, yeah,
exactly. Because, you know, every kind of business in the world is based on repeat customers and recurring revenues. And it's hard to name one that isn't. So what you want to do is set things up so that you can have repeat business and have recurring revenues and incidentally scale those recurring revenues.
Yeah,
uh,
the warranty stuff, the 5-year warranty is a really good idea. I mean, the auto industry does it already, right?
right.
You go buy a car and they say, the warranty's only good for 30,000 miles, but you can get this extended warranty. And, I'm not even that old, but I'm still old to think like to get 100,000 miles out of a car is a lot, but you know, every car has 100,000 miles, no problem now. And but it's also the pull through work, right? So I take my car in, maybe it's a warranty issue, maybe it's not, but then they're like, hey, do you want us to change the oil while we're here? And it's picking up all that pull through work. And to Fred's point, it's not a sales call, right? It's coming to check on them, and that guy might be have something in the back of his head. Oh yeah, we need this, right? Or it
Yeah,
needs.
I actually was going to say that because I wasn't sure if this translated well, but it sounds like it does. I'm sure it does. But for me, like, so I have a Jeep Wrangler, which is a mod. Well, you can do whatever you want to it, which is fantastic. So going into, I'm not that I necessarily go to my dealer for that, so no one roasts me for dealers, but uh, it's an opportunity to talk to the dealer and be like, or whomever I'm doing this work with, be like, hey, actually, like I've wanted to do this thing to my rig anyway. Like since I'm here, might as well. So I'm almost like self pull through in work basically. Like that's a win-win right there for sure, right?
Yeah, yeah, and it's not high pressure sales, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So, you know,
Before we go to the next section, I want to ask one more question because I liked when Fred and I talked about this a little bit earlier. The service vans mentioned that you said this. So my question is, what's the biggest shift in mindset when structuring a service business, Fred? Do you remember what you said about service vans?
Well, yeah, I explained earlier that my company was very much into industrial work, and we started doing service work, and then made the mistake of letting one of the old trucks that we had rumbling around a steel mill show up in a nice, pristine customer's property and got a call and said, don't be sending any more junk trucks like that around here. And the point is that you have to shift in your mentality and think about lots of things like that that make a difference to customers because you can tell an awful lot about a company based on the kind of and condition of the vehicles that show up to the curb in front of your facility when they come in. So there are things you have to attend to like that, which make a difference because you're going to be right in front of the customer and it makes a difference.
yeah, it's you're in customer service and service, right? So, you got to be presentable, you got to have, nice equipment, especially you're asking for a little bit higher rates than
Mhm.
what would be on like a typical bid thing. Plus, you might have stuff that's going like we have a lot of stuff that's T&M, right? So, they're paying a little bit higher rate and, could go on for a period of time, so they want to make sure they're getting the value for it, and when you look nice and your equipment looks nice, it just gives that better perception. Now for us, we do a lot of agricultural work and we just had rain last week, so I don't even know. I don't Our trucks are all white, but I don't think they're white this week. I think they're all covered in mud. But we're getting some dry days, and so we'll start cleaning them up and getting them nice again. But it's, for the most part, they're not all beat up, they're not all dented, and stuff like that. So it's important, right? Because it's not construction, it's service. So you have a face to it, and a brand as well.
Yeah, shifting to like my home's a residential, so not applicable here, but like the little things of service, like for example, I had someone working in my house a few years ago and left the back fence open and my dog ran out. Like Like that to me is like common, like basic, like I have a dog. Don't so all these little things that add up to the overall customer experience and service vans and the appearance for sure is part of it. Uh, we're gonna shift to the last section now. Before we do the last poll, I promise you here. I really appreciate your involvement on this. So this poll you see on the screen here. So what's going to help you the most? What's the number one thing that would make growing a service division easier for you? So if you can provide some input there, and we'll review some of those responses as we move on. So this is the last section here. We're going to talk a little bit more about growing and sustaining your service division. So you've got it. You followed Fred's three-step thing to a T. You didn't hire your staff till you had your service and all that's in the systems. Now you got your service division. So how do you make it grow and sustain? So Fred, if you want to talk a little bit about some of the steps you had, you mentioned, I think, annual business plans, cross-selling, a few of those things.
Sure, if you were doing a major construction job, and even any size construction job, about the first thing you hear from a customer is, when are you going to be done? In other words, the end point, the completion point, is something which is important to everybody. And so when you are making out a schedule for a construction project, you start at the end date and you work backwards and figure out how you're going to get there through various steps and manpower levels and so forth. And that's the sort of thing which we really all ought to be doing with our service organizations. In other words, going out to some point in the future, which we can imagine, and start to think about what sort of a service organization we'd like to have at that point. What sort of work would we be doing that we're not doing right now? How many vans would we like to have, and so on and so forth. There's many different variables involved, but the main thing is to do the same thing with your service work that you would do planning for the schedule of a large project, which might go over a couple years. Uh, let's see how we can go through various stages and steps, et cetera, to get to where we want to be someday and have an idea where we want to get to.
I want to call out the responses for the poll. They're actually pretty diverse throughout. 33% say dedicated team for service work. 25% say clearer strategy to sell service work and better pricing models and service agreements. And then coming in at 17% are tools to manage scheduling, tracking, and job history. So pretty diverse way. So there's a lot of variation on what would help you all to grow your service division. So thank you very much for that involvement. I appreciate that. You mentioned a little bit about the handoff going both ways as well in order to grow and sustain service division. Can you dive into that a little bit more of what that means?
Sure, let me start with that. If you do have a construction group and a service group, and your construction group is doing what construction groups usually do, and that is go out and help to build buildings and so forth, a tactic which is a very successful tactic with a lot of companies we know, and I hear about in great service forums all the time, is at the latter stage of a construction job, introducing your service organization to it, and there's various ways to do that. And very often when you're working through a general contractor for the new construction, you can engage with the owner of the property this way and basically set things up so that your service organization can kind of segue into not only the warranty work, but all sorts of follow-up work, which usually comes with a new construction job. And if you do that, it's the best sales approach in the world, and it's the best time to try to do it, and something which everybody I think has a sense of is that over a lifetime of a building, there's 4 times as many dollars spent on the service and maintenance of it as there was in the original construction. And incidentally, that's business which comes in at least 3 times the margins. So it's the sort of thing where your construction folks and your service folks can and should work together, even though they're 2 separate groups. They should be working and cooperating together. Now, conversely, there's going to come a time down a few years when your service people may have some inside intelligence on some new construction to be done. And now the shoe is on the other foot, and you have your service group reintroduce the construction group, and many times that can be done on a negotiated contract basis. So it's the sort of thing where one hand washes the other, It's been proven many, many times, and there's companies all over the country that do it. It's a good practice, and it's the most effective sales effort that you can also possibly make.
Yeah, and the systems you have in place will certainly help that. I know that at least with build ops, like we make it easier for you to make these recommendations, and so your folks across the organization can see these and tap into it at the right time as well. So definitely getting that systems in place. By the way, you don't have to do this by yourself, right? You don't have to live in a bubble and try to create your service division and make it grow and sustainable. There are groups out there that you can talk with and join, correct, Fred? Not to
There
make
are.
you, you know,
There's peer groups. I mentioned great service forums, but there are peer groups that are available to join. And if you're not in one, you should try to find one. It's a great way to learn about things in the business that you can't learn about any other way. The reality is most stuff isn't written down. You know, I've got a column in Electrical Contractor magazine. I certainly wouldn't depend on forecasting what's going in the future in the electrical contracting business by reading anybody's column, but the sort of things that you can learn talking to others, and in particular because things move at a different pace at different parts of the country. If you can be in a conversation with Toby Mitchell in California, you might be hearing about something that's going to be a year or two coming to your part of the country, and you get an advantage in having an insight into something before it's landed in your market.
Yeah, I'd like to say that service service work, a service division, it's not easy, right? Like it's always going to be full of headaches. And right when you solve one problem, you're going to have another problem. I mean, that's just how service is, right? Like, and we talked about this before in the past where it's like, I think all the manufacturers set up their equipment to fail on Saturday nights, right? Or on a holiday. I think it's some secret ploy they have. But so you're always going to have headaches. So you got to be part of a peer group to just bounce ideas off and solve problems. And I'm not surprised by that poll being so spread out on that. The one thing on handing construction over to service, I would cautious. I've heard a lot of people tell me that their service divisions don't make any money and stuff like that because I see a lot of contractors the service division absorbs all the warranty cost. So that warranty cost needs to stick with that project. And so it just will tweak the data and make it not look as profitable as it is. So I would just cautious that when you send your service team in there to pick up all the warranty and stuff like that. But that warranty thing is huge to have your service people there because they're there fixing stuff for free, essentially. And so they look like a trusted expert, and so it builds that credibility for the actual boots on the ground.
yeah, it's kind of like, so if you put it into my world, it's kind of like brand marketing, right? Like yeah, it's exposure. Yes, it's a free visit, but you're getting exposure, right? And you're building this rapport. So you're getting value out of it no matter what. I got a couple questions left for you all. So number one, if there's one thing you'd want contractors to take away from this conversation, what would it be? Fred, you had a great response to this, which is about the one question to ask. What is that one question to ask?
Well, the one question I would ask is on December 31st, uh, is did your company have a higher valuation than it did January 1st of that year? Now, there's lots of things that go into that, and some of them are intangible. Uh, but the reality is, if you've done certain things, uh, I think chief most among them is develop and grow a customer base. Now you have something which is clearly identifiable as creating new value in your company. And you can do that and you can scale that if you have the support of a software like we were talking about before. You can't do it any other way because it is something which builds recurring revenues. Now, my barber has recurring revenues. My barber can't scale recurring revenues in that shop because it's just impossible. In a contracting business, you can scale it. In other words, you can grow it. You can have greater recurring revenues next year than you did this year and every year in the future. That's all a reflection of what is going on with your customer base. And that's something which will build valuation in your company. And so, once again, it's not just about having a great way to dispatch service people, because that's one of the first things we all think about when we think about service software. It's a way to keep track of this customer base and really make it an asset for your company that really is off the balance sheet, but really builds the value of your organization.
To close it all off, I asked, like, for folks who are seriously thinking seriously about structuring their service a little bit more formally, what's the very first step they should take after this webinar? I'm going to just kind of run through those four that we all talked about a little bit here, and gut check to make sure that still feels good to y'all. Talk to your company's leadership team, number one. Number two, plan a course of action. Number three, hold an all hands to get everyone from apprentices to general foremen in on the plan. And then lastly, find a service-oriented group to join, as we mentioned before, which can be from outside electrical contracting. Interesting. I didn't actually process that. As we close out, can you talk a little bit more why it doesn't necessarily have to be electrical contracting when it's talking about service-oriented groups? Fred.
RC, I'm not quite sure what your question was.
You mentioned that you find a service-oriented group to join, which can be from outside electrical contracting. Does that
Well,
ring
there
a bell?
are organizations for company executives which are not
Mm,
specifically for a particular industry,
got it.
but they are organizations of company executives, and everybody has some sort of equivalent situation and set of problems in every industry,
Sure.
and so it's a place where you can perhaps pick up some insights in your own industry that you wouldn't get any other way.
I love that, right? I do that a lot in my own discipline as well. I don't necessarily just eat my own dog food, because then I'm just regurgitating the same things that we're all thinking about around. We're all trying to solve the same problems. But if you think outside the box a little bit, you might be able to infer something from someone else who has a different point of view. So I love that. Awesome. All right. Well, we took you all. We kept you all long enough. So heads up. So tomorrow I'll be sending out an email. So you look out for an email from me, RC. It'll have a recap. So what I'll do is I'll write up a little article with basically the best of hits here. Send some links out that are applicable, and also have a recording of the webinar that you're free to share and use however you so fit. So take a look out for that. If you have ideas for future webinar topics for us, reply back to the email, let me know, and I'll definitely throw that in there. But I appreciate everyone's time on the call. Those are in attendance. Toby, Fred, thank you so much. Toby, California, nice weather always. Fred, stealing all the Seahawks players. Thank you very much. Everyone, have a great rest of the day, and thank you so much. Take it easy.
Thanks, everyone. See ya.
Bye-bye. Thank you.